Hi,
Hi,
Dr.
Dr. Irvin.
Hi, Maggie.
How are you?
Oh, I can't hear you. Hold on, that's me. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. You have
Good.
two names up here, two Maggies, is that?
I know it's confusing because my old computer doesn't let me like blur my background.
Oh,
My office
okay.
is in my closet. So I have to be on two devices to allow myself to be blurred.
Okay. So how long do the folks usually talk for? Do they leave time for questions at the end, or what happens?
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever works for you. Usually like 45 minutes of talking and then like 10 or 15 minutes of chat at the end.
Okay. All right, let me see. I'm going to try to share my screen. I always have problems with this so that I can see my notes, but let me see
Okay.
what happens.
You've got time to
Share
test it.
screen 2. Okay. So is that showing up?
Yeah, I can see your slides.
Okay, no notes.
Uh-uh.
Okay. Okay. Anything else I should know? I haven't done one of these before.
So at the beginning, I will introduce you,
Uh,
and we'll probably start like promptly at 4, the even if not a ton of people are here
mhm,
yet. We'll start then. I'll give you an introduction, and then you'll kind of start uh, right after that. Does that work for you?
Sure. Yep, that
And
works.
I'll also go over like some housekeeping rules for Zoom, just
Okay.
and so people will ask questions in the chat if they have them, or just hold them until the end. We can go
Yeah.
over questions then.
And I don't mind if folks ask in the long way too.
Okay, great.
That's totally fine for me. Yeah. I
Okay.
probably am not going to be super great on the chat while I'm talking, but it might
Oh,
be
that's
easier.
fine. They actually go directly to me,
Oh, good. Okay.
so it won't be distracting.
Okay. Yeah, so just stop me anytime. Let's see here.
Sounds good.
And what is the audience? Is it like a mix of researchers and practitioners, or?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
There's a lot of people from KU and KU Med,
Mm,
practitioners, clinicians, researchers, professors, students, um, and just a lot of people from the autism community. We've had like self-advocates join before and parent
mhm.
advocates join before. Um, yeah, it's a
Okay, that's good.
pretty good mix.
Okay.
Mostly people from Matt's lab will be on
Okay.
um, today, but yeah, I'm trying to think what else. A lot of speech
Like,
language people join.
okay, I kind of geared the talk towards like a general audience the best I could. So
Perfect.
hopefully it won't be too over researchy, I guess.
Oh no, that's okay. We're used to that.
Yeah.
And Matt will probably ask some research related questions at the end. He
Yeah.
likes to do that.
Okay. All right. I might go grab a drink of water and I'll be back.
Oh yeah, that sounds good. Hi, Matt.
Hey Maggie, sorry about that. I couldn't. It had the that alert on about the recording, and so it wouldn't let me unmute. So anyway, good to see you. I'm gonna go close my. I assume Dr. Irvin is here. I see it's
Yep.
Linda. Okay, good.
How was your time in Iowa?
It was good. It was restful. I'm
Oh,
gonna
that's
make
nice.
sure it doesn't become part of the recording. So, but yeah, it was nice. It was a good holiday.
Hey, Matt.
Hey Dwight, nice to see you.
You too, man. How are you?
I'm hanging in.
Yeah, me
Well, like
too.
the end of the semester, and that kind of matters. And so I appreciate you being with us today and doing this. I'm eager to hear about what you've been working on.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
It's probably overdue. So, all right, I see people filling in. I always get a little bit nervous around attendance at the end of semesters because you see people, all of us tend to trail off a little bit as we try to meet deadlines. So, but hopefully we get a good group today. We'll see.
Yeah.
So Dwight, I think if you're ready, I think people are going to continue to roll in over the next few minutes. But obviously people are starting to arrive. So just in the interest of respect for your time, Maggie, do you want to get us started and introduce Dr. Irvin?
Yeah, I'd love to. So just a bit of some housekeeping before we get started. For Zoom procedures, we ask that everybody remain muted throughout today's talk, but feel free to leave your video on. And for questions, you can ask them in the chat. Those will come to me and I can pose them, or you can unmute yourself at the end of the talk and ask your questions directly. You can find a complete schedule of this semester's talks from on our KCART website, and we're planning next semester's talks as well. This is the last KCART seminar of this semester. Our speaker today is Dr. Dwight Irvin. He earned his master's in social science from the University of Amsterdam and his PhD in education from the University of North Carolina. He's currently an assistant research professor at Juniper Gardens Children's Project. His research interests center on developing and refining measurement approaches to capture movement and location in young children at risk for and with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and to better understand and enhance the language environments that these children experience in school, their home, and community settings. He directs and co-directs several research projects from federal agencies and local foundations. For example, he leads an institution for education sciences titled Validity Studies of the Classroom Code for Interactive Recordings of Children's Learning Environments. This project focused on validating the use of the circle, an observational instrument designed to close the literacy gap for all learners. He also directs a National Science Foundation project focused on using existing wearable technology and advanced speech recognition and diarization algorithms to monitor student engagement over time in science activities in the classroom and in the community. Dr. Irvin's recent publications include Measuring Social Communication in the Community, Novel Tools for Advancing Family Participation, and an Automated Approach to Measuring Child Movement and Location in the Early Childhood Classroom. Today, he'll be talking about his research focusing on the use of sensing technologies, which can help us better understand young children's experiences in early childhood settings. With sensing technologies, we can examine experiences that vary vastly from child to child, such as child's interaction partners and level of exposure to verbal interactions. Dr. Irvin will discuss prior work using sensing technologies to examine talk among young children and educators in locations of the classroom and playground, as well as current work aimed at examining the link between young children's social networks and their language development. Additionally, he'll provide a look behind the curtain of what went right, what could have gone better, and importantly, how others can learn from these experiences using sensing technologies.
Okay, well, thanks for that introduction. I'll jump right into it. So today I'm going to give you just a brief overview of some of the goals that we have for this work. And when I say we, this is the work that I've been doing, I guess, since I was a postdoc. Yeah, since I was a postdoc at Juniper Gardens with folks at Juniper Gardens at University of Kentucky and University of Dallas at Texas, and now some Ohio State and University of Miami. I'll first talk about some of the ways that we've captured talk in the classroom using sensors, and then I'll cover some work around talk on the playground, and then talk in community settings, and then I'll also talk about some of our recently funded work through the Spencer Foundation to get at children's peer social networks and offer some points on where we're headed in the future. So let's see here. So our big, bold goals. So what this work is really aimed at is trying to answer research questions that can't be addressed with current observational tools or self-report measures in ways that basically offer us a more granular look at children's interactions in specific places within the classroom. So that could be art versus pretend play, or in the community when we're looking at the grocery store versus the park. The exciting thing about the tools are that they are objective. They can be used multiple days at a time, or over multiple days. The prices are coming down. They were fairly expensive, I think, when I first started out, but there are new tools coming online that are more, I would say, accessible in terms of price. So right now, the work that I'll talk about is really is pretty, I would say, pilot work, and the goal for this is to eventually get it to a spot where we can start providing information back to teachers to inform their practice, whether it's around the amount of talk they're providing to children, whether, you know, the amount of talk that children are receiving from peers. These are things that we're hoping that this work will eventually get into that space. And I guess I should say it's not just teachers, it's parents too. So providing them the same type of information around the talk that their child is receiving from them, and I would say siblings as well. So let's see, and then I think those are the two big goals, and I'll just go into the talk around the classroom. So why am I interested in this? Well, we know that the talk that children receive is essential for a number of developmental outcomes, be it language, their social skills, literacy. It's also important for their friendships and their playmates, the developing playmates, and it's particularly important for children with delays and disabilities. So we also know that the talk experienced by children varies by the activity areas in the classroom that they're in. So we see different levels of talk when children are in cars versus trucks or pretend play. And this also varies by child characteristics, such as whether the child has a delay or a disability. So some of the sensing tools that we've used in the classroom are Lena and Ubersense. So as I mentioned, I started this workout as a postdoc, and it came out of it came out of time spent with Brian Boyd on his projects at Chapel Hill. So there we used the Lena, which is a speech recording and processing device that picks up adult words, child vocalizations, and vocalizations from peers. It also gets at adult-child turns. And at Chapel Hill, we use this with young children with autism in the classroom. And we got some nice, a couple publications out of it. And one thing when I came out to University of Kansas is that I wanted to build on this tool. And the thing that it needed was something about the location of children. So where it doesn't, the tool just provides information about the speech, but you have no idea whether that speech is happening in the home, in the classroom, at some place out in the community. So I had some talks with Steve Warren and Charlie Greenwood about what we could do to start to get at this intersection of talk and location. So I went out and looked around, and I found this indoor mapping tool called Ubersense, which you can see a picture of it. There's a sensor hanging in the corner of the classroom, and then the little location tag it's in the bottom left-hand corner. And what this is it's basically a, you can think of it like GPS for indoors. So we can't use GPS indoors because the GPS signal isn't going to work inside buildings. So we have to take a different approach. And this tool conceptually does something very similar. There's communication that happens between location tag and sensor. and it allows for us to put basically figure out where people are at a given space. And this takes place after we've created a map of the classroom. It also allows for us to look at movement and movement patterns in the classroom. So we did some work at Project Eagle where we tested this location system out with the Lena to begin to look at children in the preschool classroom and where they were receiving talk from peers and adults. And it was pretty challenging, not only this is the first time this kind of Ubersense has been used in the classroom. So to be able to set that up and get it to work, but also dealing with the enormous amounts of data that comes from it. So the system can be set up to produce data at a 1 second interval. And I think at it increases, they're always increasing the amount, but I think it's maybe 20 seconds per interval. So you get this enormous amount of data that's coming through. And what we had to do once we had that data was then to figure out how we're going to merge the Lena data with the Ubersense data. So when we were doing this initial work, we set the Ubersense data to a 1 second interval, and then the Lena we figured out with some tech folks at Juniper Gardens how to get that to a 1 second interval so that we can get the time linked up, so that we could see when kids were receiving specific talk in locations of the classroom. So this work I took to University of Kentucky, and we scaled it up to, let's see, maybe 4 classrooms. So we did it in 2 preschool classrooms and 2 toddler classrooms. And we did it on, it was a majority of kids. We had pretty high participation. So we had a lot of kids participating, and we had teachers participating too. So the study at KU was just a couple children. So to set this thing up and to get it to work in multiple classrooms was well, that was challenging too. So those are the tools. And I should say, if there's any questions, feel free to ask me along the way. I'm happy to field them. Let's see. And I want to say, yeah, well, I'll talk about that a little later. So for this study, we had, you'll see in the top right-hand corner, it's a child demonstrating kind of where those location tags go and where the Lena goes. The location tag goes on the shoulder because Ubersense has trouble with the signal going through steel and water. So the engineers, we worked with the engineers to set that up, or to put it on the children's shoulders so that we could get a good signal. And then the Lena goes in a little pocket in the front. And then the adults wore the Lenas in a fanny pack. And this study we did, we did it about 3 days per classroom, and it was over a couple months. So between the pilot data and the work at University of Kentucky, we got several studies come out of this. And the first one was validating Ubersense for the early childhood classroom, because we needed to do that. Ubersense has been used in health settings with folks with dementia, who have had others who have had traumatic brain injuries. It's used a bunch in industry, so they use it to track planes and like cars and big lots where they house these things and have to move them around. So we needed to make sure that we could get this thing set up and that it's going to work, it's feasible, and that the children can wear it and all of that. So we did a series of tests where we basically took specific points in the classroom that we figured that we measured out with a laser pointer, and then ran the Ubersense system and pinpointed where children were in different activity areas, and then also looked at different movement patterns, if they were wandering, if they were pacing, and then compared our measurements that we took by hand to the systems, and it was pretty good. It was pretty close to what they're seeing in health related settings. So that was the first work that came out of it. Then we had a pilot paper where that included one child with a developmental delay, and we looked at the talk that he was receiving across activities areas of the classroom. And the picture to the right is one of the things that we developed, and is actually what we hope some of the graphics to look like for teachers, to give that information back someday when we get there. So it's a heat map demonstrating where this child heard more or less words from the classroom adults. This map was Charlie's idea, and it was a pretty tall order. We had to take the data from Ubersense and Lena and we had to create a CAD file of the classroom, mapping it out, and then overlay this using power maps through Excel. So there was multiple kind of pieces just to moving the data through these different programs to get this image, but it looks pretty good, I think, and it's a good prototype for some of the data that we hope to one day give back to teachers. We have some other work where we looked at children's friendships. So they wore Lena and Ubersense, and we looked at how much they were talking with their playmates. And interestingly, we found that blocks seemed to be the place where they were more proximal and to one another, and then having the most talk. Some of our more recent work is it's out more in engineering conference papers at the moment. I think we're hoping to get something out here pretty soon, but we started to take some of this this data and use keyword spotting. So our partners down in Texas, John Hansen and his students have been working on this. And what we're starting to do is we've mainly been focused on science, given the NSF funding we have right now, but to look at where when teachers are asking WH questions in science. We know that WH questions are important for facilitating conversations, and the keyword spotting is we're just starting that up. So we chose to focus on that since that's a meaningful tool in terms of promoting children's language development. So that's some exciting work that's going on. And as of now, we have our accuracy for getting at these questions is about 63%. So it needs to be better, but it's a pretty good start, particularly for the classroom environment, which I should mention, given the levels of noise and overlapping speech in preschool classrooms, makes this particularly challenging on the speech processing side. So, well, at least that's what John tells me. He reminds me of it quite often, how difficult it is to be able to get at children's speech. The adult speech is a little bit easier, but the child speech is really tough. But we're up for the challenge. Okay, so I'll talk now about the work that we've done on the playground. So when I was at Kentucky, we were supposed to do some of this work on the playground, but the classroom, the timeline for the classroom and the challenges in doing that multiple classrooms turned out to be just too much, and we just couldn't get the playground work done. So this got pushed a couple years, and this work it came out of some pilot funds that I got from Kittredge, and then my colleague Beth Rouse, who had some money from Kentucky, we came together and pulled those funds to do this work. So similar to the classroom, I mean, we know that the talk that children receive is important for developmental outcomes, and it's influenced by the space. So the equipment and the areas of the playground that children are occupying. So that's why I'm interested in it. It's a particularly, I think, hard place to get to measure interactions because children, I mean, getting under playground, under slides or up high when they're on pieces of playground, different pieces of playground, I think can be somewhat difficult for observers without interfering with those interactions. So tools are needed to get at this stuff. And right now, direct observational approaches are really the best thing we have. So this is, the hope here is that these tools can give us that kind of information without being so heavy on of a burden in terms of data collection, and also to do it in a way that doesn't entail so many resources in terms of having folks out there and observing over multiple days. And then the other nice thing about it, which I should have mentioned about the classroom, is that these location systems can track multiple individuals at the same time. So when we're looking at the classroom and the playground, information is coming in on all the kids that are willing, that participate. So it's something that's just kind of, it's not something that we could feasibly have. We can't have people in the classroom, enough people to watch all the kids in the classroom, nor enough people to watch all the kids on the playground. So that part is a nice feature of the tools. And again, this work we used Lena and Ubersense. Ubersense is capable of being put outside. There's some plastic covers that go on the back of it, so you can put it up and it does just fine against the weather. Some of the systems that exist for tracking location aren't that. I don't think they're as well suited as Ubersense. They use Bluetooth, which is one of the tools I'm using now, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But this is a pretty powerful tool, and I should have also mentioned, I mean, the reason I chose it is because of its accuracy. It gets location from the tag within about a foot. So there's other systems out there. There's a Zebra system. Some of these other systems don't have quite the accuracy nor the reliability in terms of getting accurate measures all the time. So that was another reason I picked this tool. And it was initially for a classroom kit, and that's 4 sensors that get put up in the corners of the classroom and 10 location tags. It's $14,000. So somehow I talked Charlie Greenwood into letting me use all my postdoc funds to buy this system. But I think it was a good investment. I think you would probably say the same. As you, in buying more systems, more kits, the company does have some discounts. So we did get a pretty good price for the systems we bought in Kentucky. And I should mention the Lena, I don't know what the going rate for Lena right now is, probably around 10,000 for the license and recorder. And the recorders then I think they end up being about $200 a piece. And there's shirts that come with them. And there's a cost with that too, and an annual fee. And Ubersense has an annual fee as well. So for this playground study, we had, again, pretty good participation, and this included children who were toddler age as well as preschoolers. This was where it had the playground. This is the picture of one of the playgrounds. There was actually 3 playgrounds. We were going to try to do this work on 3 playgrounds, but it was just too overwhelming. So we ended up only doing this canopy area and then one larger piece of equipment. But the sensors are set up in a similar way in terms of the Ubersense sensor, just like the classroom. They just get set up in the 4 corners of the space. And then they're tracking everything within it. And we set it at a 1 second interval. The system does have to be set up and calibrated, which is one of the, I would say, the disadvantages of Ubersense is it is fairly hard. It takes quite a bit to get it set up and calibrated, more so than the current location system I'm working with right now. So that's you kind of got to have some. It's helpful to have an engineer. The company does provide support, so I was able to work with engineers to help me get this thing running along with, and I had a postdoc who also was helpful, but it was challenging, and it is a challenging tool. So let's see, and then so where was I? Okay, so we set this up. This study was actually really fast. This was about a week and a half of data collection, and we collected data once a day. We did mornings and afternoons and we did this canopy area and then also that larger piece of equipment. So we kind of went back and forth. And there's a picture of some of the kids wearing the Lena and Ubersense in their shirts. So we've really just started to get to analyze this data, I would say, over the past year. So we have a conference paper that gets at an engineering conference paper that gets at the time that children spent on and near different pieces of playground equipment. And then there's a paper that's ready to go that's that will get submitted soon, that's looking at where children with and without special needs were experiencing talk, both on the different pieces of equipment underneath that canopy, but whether they were under the canopy or whether they were out in the grassy area. Some of the things that we found is that, and the results are pretty encouraging, because what we did find is that children with special needs were receiving more talk from educators and peers compared to kids with had typical development. They also received, and this was like overall, and then also received more talk, these children with special needs, on the different pieces of equipment. So sometimes that's not always the case, according to the literature, that these kids aren't always getting as much talk from peers. If anything, they might be engaging more so with adults, perhaps just because there's so much room on playgrounds for them to go. But these results, they are preliminary, but they are exciting, and are showing that we're seeing good amounts of talk for these little ones. Okay, so community settings. So this work.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Did you show that data? I'd be curious to see that data. You just said that there was that kids who were typically developing actually experienced less.
Yeah, I don't have a table here. I can send it out though to the group. I can send the results out if that'd be helpful.
Great. Just curious about the effect sizes and.
Oh, it's not, I wouldn't say, well, so I should have mentioned this, Matt, but all of this is that it's a descriptive level. So we haven't gotten into any kind of like effect sizes. Gotcha. Or like statistical analysis. I mean, it's really, really, preliminary, just like how the rates of talk that kids were receiving.
Sure.
So, you know, that I think some of the next steps once we get into more of the data and larger samples, this sample, this paper is we just have a sample of 14 kids that we're looking at for one day under that canopy area. So that was another reason we haven't really gone too far into the statistical analysis, but we hope to in the future.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so talk in the community settings. So this was, I got some money when I was out in Kentucky through an internal award to do some of this work, and the work again started at KU, where I was interested in this, again, this intersection of talk and location. So we used a GPS device called Q-Stars and the Lena, and started to look at where children, well, where that talk was happening. And this was we just did it with, I think, maybe 2 kids, and were able to get the time interval set and between the GPS and the Lena. The GPS was a little bit different. I believe it's on a 5-second interval. So we had to work that out again. I mean, it's just an ongoing issue. What I found is that the more tools that you get, the different types of tools, I just haven't had one case. There hasn't been one time where it's like everything is like perfect and they all line up. There's always this constant, like, how do we figure this out? How do we get this down to this like level where they line up? And then how do we build out from there in terms of you know, what we're able to learn from the data. So I was and I still am interested in this work, just because my work around young children with autism, and we don't know a whole lot about the talk that these kids receive with their caregivers while they're out in community settings. So that's kind of what drove me towards this, and this I guess overarching vision of like an idea of like, how do we you know, moving towards this, like getting at talk within all these different locations. So someday it would be amazing to get at, you know, seeing children in the classroom, then seeing them in the home, and then seeing them in various community settings, so that we can get this, you know, full holistic kind of picture of what the talk looks like that they're receiving. Because pretty much everything, at least the things that I see, it's always, you know, it's just in the home, or it's just, you know, the home in the community, or maybe it's in the school, but to get a sense of all the talk that kids are young children receiving, you know, is you know, it's I guess a dream going forward that someday will be realized. I hope. I mean, we're still doing it piecemeal, but I think we'll get there once we get all the right tools in place. So for this, again, we use the Lena and then this Q-Stars device, and it's just a GPS data logger. It had been used with some studies around with young children, so that's why I picked it. The children wear the Lena again on their shirt, and then the Q-Stars, they wore it on their belt loop, and I think we had a belt loop or a fanny pack. I think we had to put it in a fanny pack for some kids. So we had the pilot work was just a day with a typically developing kid, and then the money that I got from Kentucky, we had 5 typically developing children, and then 5 children with autism. So in that data, it was the kids wore it over one weekend, the Lena and the Q-Stars. And again, it's very preliminary, it's descriptive work. We're just looking at these kinds of where talk is happening and location, both the child's talk, the adult's talk, talk from peers. When I first piloted, I did some initial testing where I had parents keep a diary around the locations and times to try to get a sense of where it was comparable. And then I went out with a friend of mine to also see if the estimates with his child, we got something similar, and it was pretty accurate. So this is just one of the graphics that we have produced. And to do this work, I had to bring in somebody from the geography department because the data that you get from the GPS does not include location. It's just simply like longitude and latitude and a timestamp. So in order to figure out those coordinates within locations, I had to bring in a geographer to run this data through a GIS system, which is something all of this work has pretty much has required partners from different fields, whether that be engineering or geography yeah. So I think that's kind of one of the nice things. I get to work with folks from all over from all different places, and I like that. So the products, we have like I said, a proof of concept article. These are, and then that small study with children with and without ASD. For the proof of concept paper, we found that the most adult words were experienced at a gas station, which was interesting. And the parent who did this testing said that I asked them about it, and I think while they were pumping gas, they were talking to their kids. They while this was all going on, they were fairly young children. And this is the rate of talk. So this is, the amount of time divided by the number of words. And then the most adult child conversational turns took place in the car while they were traveling. We did find some differences between in this small sample with ASD and kids with typical development. In that the children with ASD received some less talk in some of the locations. So some of that data we still need to analyze to get a better sense of that. There just wasn't quite the sample to do a whole lot with it. Okay, so let's see, how am I on time? So some of the current work that I have going on is about building off these initial pilot studies. So this work is funded through the Spencer Foundation. It's with folks at Ohio State, Laura Justice and her team, and then University of Miami, Daniel Messenger and his group. And what we're doing here is using these same kinds of speech and location tools to understand children's peer social networks and how that relates to language development. This is going to be quite a large sample. It'll be, I think, 500 kids when it's all said and done. So we will be able to do some more sophisticated analysis. And let's see, what else is there? 3 sites. It's a 3-year study. We are just getting going right now. Actually, before this call, I was at a school talking to a director about having some of her teachers participate. But my interest in this is really related to getting a better understanding of these peer social networks and how they are influencing children's language, given we know that the tools to do it, again, are around direct observation, and they're not really suited for seeing how these interactions over time are influencing kids' language. So for this study, we have we're using this. I think it's called Really, REELY, I believe, and these are the OWL antennas. This is a Bluetooth system. So we're not, for this study, we're looking at just at proximity. So kids have a little location tag, which is this gray circular thing in the bottom right-hand corner. And it's just going to tell us how often kids are within 1.5 meters of each other. So I think that's about 3 or 4 feet. And then we place these antennas around the classroom. It runs through a laptop, just like Ubersense does. And we'll run it throughout the day and we'll collect data, I think December through June, in about 10 classrooms per site. The teachers and children will wear the beacons, and then we'll collect talk through an audio recorder. And that data will then get run through Alice, which is an open source speech processing tool. And then we'll go ahead and, like we've done with other speech and location tools, merge this data to get a better sense of kids' interactions. And then we're also doing the language assessment, the PLS-5 at beginning and end, so that we can look at the relationship between these interactions and kids' proximity and talk. Let me see, I've got a few minutes. So now for some of the challenges. So for the classroom. So Ubersense, like I mentioned earlier, it takes quite a bit to set it up. I think it generally would take, I don't know, maybe 3 hours to get it all set up in a classroom. So we had to do a lot of this work after hours, sometimes late in the evening. I would say 3 hours, like once we really got good at setting it up. It's connected through Ethernet cords. So when we had the sensors in the corners, we would have to run the cord above the ceiling tiles, which required basically tying the cord to some sort of like metal pole and then throwing it past through the ceiling to get it connected, to connect each one of these sensors so that they were able to communicate with the location tags and then bring that data down to a laptop. So I had to, luckily for the Kentucky study, I had an engineer working with me who was good with doing all that and getting up on ladders. I'm not really great on ladders, but she was willing to do it. We did have one, we tried to pilot putting the tags on materials in the classroom because we were interested in like how kids, when kids were interacting with certain materials. So if the tag's on a child and then also on a material, we can see when those two are moving and are together. So we decided to test this out. And so we put the location tags using Velcro on these different pieces of material in the classroom. And this was a toddler age classroom. And we left for the day because we always typically drop this stuff off, get everybody situated. Oh, sorry, my dog is barking. And then we would, let's see, where did it? Give me 1 second.
Maggie, we need to have like a music queued up for any pauses in the talk.
I know, I'll work on elevator music.
There you go.
Sorry about that. Okay, so we put these the sensors on the tags on the different pieces of materials in the classroom. We left for the day. We came back and the teacher said that one of the kids figured out how to rip off the tag from the materials, and then it created this domino effect. And all of the kids, they spent the whole day trying to find these location tags to pull off the pieces of the material. And they were scattered all over the classroom. It was a total wash. We lost all the data. It was just like, they had a good time. I mean, they seemed to enjoy it, but it was bad for us. And then, so going forward, we did a little bit of testing with that on the playground, and we used some duct tape, and that worked better. So then for the current study using this Bluetooth system, we're using these commando strips and Velcro to put it on walls. And what we're finding right now, and we're working through this, is that it doesn't stick well to textured walls. So these are just things that constantly come up, and figuring out how to get these, you know, these things up and running and safe and going. And so we don't have a solution yet, but I think we'll end up with one. There's always, it seems like one always shows up. The playground. So the playground, the weather can be difficult, not necessarily for Ubersense, but definitely for us. When we were doing this work, the engineer that I was working with, it's the same one who I was working with in the classroom in Kentucky. She got sun poisoning being out there. It was really hot. It was June, and that didn't go over well. He was pretty mad at me about that. Some of the other challenges is the teachers would change the classroom schedule. So we thought the kids would be coming out on the preschool playground, but then they would switch something up, and we'd end up with toddlers and on the playground, or they changed playgrounds. So handling all that those kinds of things, which were unexpected. The power situation, we didn't want to run extension cords out to the playground, so we ended up having to buy these large portable batteries so that we can run our laptop, run the Ubersense, and do all that stuff. The sensor setup can be challenging. It was fine in the canopy area, but the larger piece of equipment that we looked at, we had to figure out how to basically get them high enough so that they can point down and capture movement. So that part was difficult, and the playgrounds are so variable that it just seems like that it's important and exciting work, but it is a tough space to figure out, and it comes with a lot of uniqueness, I guess, more so than the classroom. The community, I've talked about this, but the data sources on the different time intervals, and it really applies to all this. That piece is always challenging, and then just being able to having to get the GPS to run through GIS, which when I first did it, I thought I was going to get longitude, latitude, and then location, and I was mistaken because I did not get anything about location, and then I had to go out and find a geographer to help me figure out how to do this, because I didn't even anticipate it. Some of the future directions, we collected a little bit of pilot data around using accelerometers on the playground. So we're going to be looking at some of that physical activity data related to different pieces of hopefully playground equipment, as well as whether children, where they were in the different playground spaces. And then I've already mentioned this, the kind of like where it's headed, but the goal is to get something like this, on ideally teachers' phones or tablets, to where they're getting kind of daily or weekly or whatever they want in terms of updates on kids' interactions in these different spaces, so that they can make decisions about how to support children's interactions with peers and how much talk they're providing them. And that's it. So I think, well, I'm a little bit over, but pretty close.
I think you're right on time, Dwight. So thank you for that. Dwight, I'll open it up to questions just a moment, but I am curious about your thoughts. I mean, I noticed that I was really pleased to see really large audience and people from our region, but also people from around the country. Good to see you, Dr. Bott and others. It's great to see you joining. So I do know that a lot of the folks in the audience are particularly interested in questions around this exciting technology and how they may inform us about autism or other developmental disabilities. So I guess from a broader perspective, where are you seeing this go? I mean, what are the big questions you're feeling like this technology can address for us in the context of autism development, or in context of developmental disabilities, or is this work, are you at a stage where you're primarily focused on just language development, in a broader general population?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, where it's going is to begin to look at, well, to use some of these pieces to get these tools to help better inform children's progress or lack thereof over time in terms of some of these developmental outcomes. So how do we see their language changing? How do we see their social skills changing, their friendships changing over time? And getting answers to those questions, but also having more immediate data for teachers, clinicians, parents to then be able to intervene with the right kinds of supports to provide those children the kinds of experiences they need to improve their development. That's where I want it to go. And I think, these ongoing granular kinds of measurements will hopefully tell us more about that, and in terms of how children are making that progress or not making progress by different disabilities, and in various contexts. So where we're seeing gains based on these kinds of the talk that they're experiencing.
So do you see this as being potentially useful, and maybe people are doing this and I don't know about it, but potentially useful in the context of, real-time feedback in the context of a clinical trial? So for like a language intervention, would this kind of data be useful in that context, or?
I hope so. I think it would be. That's where I think it would be, it would be quite compelling to see how it would look different in that context. I think it can tell us about some of the efficacy around interventions that are currently being used, and it may help us refine some of those for kids around their language development or the types of relationships that they're having with peers.
Thanks.
So this is Steve Warren. I have a question about that, sort of following up on the first question there. So is there a hypothesis to this work? Is it just purely descriptive?
There's a hypothesis. My hypothesis, I think of this as like that when we can get at the quantity and quality of talk, that we can have a better sense of how the amount of that is actually changing kids' developmental trajectories. And I guess if we go back to the idea that more talk and the quality of talk does have is going to have a positive impact on children's outcomes, I think we could start there. There is of course this, the idea that maybe there could always be too much talk, so there's not enough talk for children to have. But that's kind of where I'm situated, and also that getting at some sense of like, what are the levels of talk that are needed across home, community, school to actually move the needle.
So this seems like early stage work in that respect.
Yeah.
For sure. So not hypothesis driven, just trying to figure out if this kind of technology can be helpful in a sense. Is that fair enough?
I think so. That is fair. Yeah.
We have time for a couple more questions if people have them. So please feel free to unmute yourself or drop your questions in the chat.
I had a quick question, or many questions actually. It's fascinating talk, Dwight. I've always gotten into research areas where the technology seemed reasonable and that I could handle it. And then I remember, all the way from my PhD years, got into 3D kinematics of infant arm movements, and then lately did FNIRs, and the time it takes to collect the data, generally the time it takes to analyze the data is almost 10 or 15 times of what it takes to collect, or even more, 20 times of what it takes to collect. So, this takes a lot of time. Each time I get into new technology, how long does post-processing take in this case?
Well, the processing from the Lena is quite fast. That's I don't know, like an 8-hour day or something. I mean, I think that can be that's down to, I don't know what it takes, several minutes now. The Ubersense data comes in as you go, so that data is immediately available. The time which we've taken care of, what was really the difficulty is getting all that stuff together and in a format where we can examine, talk within location. But with we've got that part worked out now with some programs that were developed in MATLAB. But so that, I don't know, does that answer your question? I mean, that's pretty much it. It was a long time to get it worked out, but now that we have the processing programs to do that, it's quite fast.
And so for an hour of data coming from maybe 15 children in the class, how many hours will it take me to analyze the language and maybe get, percent of time somebody was speaking and all their locations, like the trajectory? I'm assuming you are getting trajectories, like second to second position in 3D space.
Yeah.
Does it give accelerations and velocities as well, or just the trajectories? Do you have to calculate those things?
Yeah, there's I mean, for the Ubersense data, you have an XYZ coordinate, so it's putting people in that kind of space, and then it doesn't. I think you can calculate the velocity. I haven't done that. I haven't used the tool for that purpose. But there are people out there that have done that kind of work.
And then do you overlay video or all these data? I'm assuming talk and location is synchronized in time.
Yeah.
But is video possible to overlay on this? Because the context of what is happening is really available to you when you see what's actually happening through video.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question. I haven't tried to do it. I mean, it seems possible. I mean, to just it would require, I don't know how that would actually to do that. And it seems like it could get fairly complex depending on how specific the locations are that you're wanting to look at. And how much kids are moving around. If they're moving around a lot from location to location, and then to code that or to create, I think it would. Yeah, I don't know. Seems like it would have to be coded and then linked up.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions, but I want to give the opportunity to ask. But
it sounds challenging. I mean, it sounds exciting. It would be a really cool thing to do. We've done some video just to see it, just to particularly around like the Ubersense, to see how to compare it to what we're getting to where kids are, but we've never tried to incorporate that.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And I'll just jump in there. Dwight, we're right on time at 5 o'clock. So I wanted to thank you for presenting this work, for doing this, especially at this point in the semester where I think it's often a busy time for people. So thank you for making time to do it. And thank you everyone for joining. This is our last seminar of the year. And so I've been really pleased with how they've gone, even though we still exist in a Zoom format, and I do miss being in person. We have discussions around that and the format that we'll have moving forward, but one positive consequence of this pandemic has been that we've kind of figured out Zoom. So regardless of when we go back to in person, we'll continue to try to have the virtual format to give people flexibility and options in their schedule, and to really encourage people from outside of KU to continue to come and to continue to join, because that is great to see. So Dwight, thanks for doing it. We will be announcing the schedule for next semester in the coming weeks, if not month. And so we'll look forward to seeing you at future talks. Everybody have a good holiday, good end of the semester, and take care. All right. See you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dwight.
Thanks.